We are.
Hello, we're live, yes, and we're only 5 minutes late. This is a new record. We're really breaking trends here and keeping our loyal viewers, not waiting for as long as, I think it was about half an hour at one point. So we are cutting it down. You never know. We might actually make it on air on time. I'm delighted to say that I'm joined as ever by Alex Armstrong and, of course, Younes Sadaghiani, who you will have no doubt seen
Darren,
if you've
it's
been
Younes
watching.
Sadaghiani.
What did I say?
Sadaghiani.
Sadaghiani, that's right.
G sound, it's a G.
G.
It's not J. Yeah,
J.
Basically, the
That's
H
my
is silent.
accent. That's my accent. But anyway, yes, I'm joined by Younes anyway. He's become a regular on these streams, and he's desperate to talk about Sadiq Khan's latest video with Sakia Starmer, which we'll get on to a bit later. Roger very unkindly says we're a bit like British Rail. Might be late, but you get there in the end. Well, sounds like me as a lover, Roger.
Just a reminder, Roger, when Labour come back in, they'll be nationalising the railways. So expect delays to be twofold. If London's anything to go by, I haven't had a running train for 2 weeks.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah. Almost every, I've worked it out, 7 or 14 days there's been severe delays or some sort of delay on the Overground District line where I live. It's been horrendous. Wow. And it's not even bad weather. It's just mild. I don't know.
Yeah. No, I know. Any excuse these days. And by the way, Sadiq Khan was elected on a platform of saying, I'll stop the strikes and all that. And he never bloody did he?
No.
Right. Speaking of people that get on my tits, putting it mildly, Just Stop Oil. Their latest stunt has outraged people, and now I'm absolutely convinced that they are a psyop for big oil, right? I think actually they must be hired by big oil just to convince us all that big oil aren't the bad guys, because they are doing the best PR possible across a whole host of things, whether it be desecrating His Majesty the King's first portrait, which, by the way, I think is bad enough without having Just Stop Oil scroll all over it.
Yeah.
And then this latest stunt in which they spray Stonehenge with this orange, they say it's corn flour and something else. So they're saying it will rinse off in the rain. But I appreciate this older woman here doing her level best to stop them. On her own, by the way, valiant stuff. And anyway, it goes on like that, and you can see here in full view the orange that's now defacing Stonehenge. Now, of course, this is a landmark that, well, it's a UNESCO protected landmark, and has stood the test of time. You know, you could argue actually it stood climate change, you know, that old thing. It's weathered that all right as well. But it can't weather perhaps Just Stop Oil. And I just wondered, do either of you actually think that these tactics are going to help them or hinder?
Not at all.
No, they Go ahead, Younes, go ahead.
Not at all, because every time I see these people, it really angers me, and it has the opposite effect, as you said, because people are fed up, but they're trying to get into work. I had them in my street like a year ago, and they made me get to work like half an hour late, and they're actually doing nothing for the environment. This whole environmental hoax we're talking about, yes, there is climate change, but there has been climate change since the beginning of time. And these people are basically a bunch of lefty, wokey people that have nothing better to do with their lives. Okay, if you care about the environment, go and build an electric car like Elon Musk, if you're so concerned about the environment. But you're not concerned about the environment. You're just a bunch of virtue signaling idiots that have nothing better to do with their lives. And this is what you do. And you're a nuisance. And as a matter of fact, it's having the opposite effect. Yeah. It's really having the opposite effect. And final point on this. Yeah, if we just stop oil, we just export it to other countries such as China and India. And they're going to be emitting CO2 emissions, and they're going to be the ones that will grow their economy instead of us. We live on one earth. So what difference does it make if we stop it here and then export it to China and India? The whole thing doesn't make sense. And this whole thing about plastic bags. Okay, what should we replace plastic bags with? Paper bags. Okay, where does paper come from? Trees. So you want to cut down more trees to get rid of plastic. It just doesn't make sense for me. They haven't really thought this through.
No, oh no, not at all. None of it. They've thought this is virtue signaling, right? We live in an age now in which actually it's not having a Louis Vuitton bag, it's not having the latest designer trends. Actually, it's about how worthy you are when it comes to causes, activism. We had it with Black Lives Matter. We've had it with over Palestine. We've had it with the environmental issues. This is all about proving you're a good person by the status symbols you wear through your activism. And a lot of the comments, Alex, are saying things like time to charge them every time they break the law, they need locking up, these Just Stop Oil people need prosecuted. A lot of consensus there that actually what needs to happen to stop these people is for there to be a significant deterrent, i.e. enforcement of the law. Why is it actually that we see such a hands-off approach by the police? And I mean that literally.
Well, I mean, we know there's an agenda, don't we? We know there's an agenda, and we know the police are a soft touch for anyone that isn't supposedly right-wing, and I put that in massive quotation marks. I mean, the good news about this, for all those people calling for the protesters to be locked up, they probably will be this time, because the Ancient Monuments Act, and of course, Stonehenge being a UNESCO heritage site, means it's extremely protected against human activity. I mean, it's been cordoned off for humans not to go near it for a reason, and now they've completely broken every rule under the book. I'm sure the judge is not going to treat them very favourably. This is one of our most important British English landmarks. It's been going for 5,000 years, at least, we think. And for them to have gone and done that just purely for attention, let's not forget, they only attack these monuments for attention. There's no reason to go after Stonehenge. It's got nothing to do with climate change. It's a natural monument that we've put in stone. It's not exactly upsetting the environment, but they're doing it for media attention. So what all this is going to do is what it has been doing for the last, I don't know, how long has Just Stop been around for? Years? The last 2 years, just turn more of the public against them.
Yeah, absolutely. And the whole tactic of this of being a sort of disruptive activism is clearly turning people against it, and especially when it comes at a time, Younes, when actually people are struggling, and that their energy bills that they've experienced over the winter that we had, and well, I was going to say into this summer, but we haven't had a summer, but nonetheless, their energy bills have been monumental. Nothing we've experienced in living memory. So this activism just looks completely out of touch.
Exactly, and we need fossil fuels. Let's get rid of this.
I agree, 100%. 100%.
This whole net zero thing is a big lie. First of all, there's no way we're going to reach our goals by 2030. We're going to need fossil fuels for the next 20 to 30 years. It's a trillions-dollar industry, and we can't just go to electric or nuclear overnight. This has to be a year-long transition. The environmentalists, they have been lying for the last 50 years. They said by 2013, all the ice caps would have melted. That didn't happen. Greta Thunberg tweeted in 2018 that in 5 years' time, the world will end. And that was last year, and we're still here. So again,
that's why she deleted that tweet conveniently.
Yes, exactly. She did. Yeah.
Exactly. And they're so out of touch fundamentally, and they're lying to us. And this whole thing is affecting the normal working man and woman, because people can't pay for their energy bills. We need gas, we need diesel, we need petrol, we need all these things. And Younes, again, it all goes back to the whole environmental hoax. I'm not saying we shouldn't protect the environment. Of course we should, but it's massively overstated and it's hurting the consumer.
Yes, and whenever anyone says Younes, Alex, I always think that they're using a homophobic slur.
I think most people would have Younes over Younes.
Oh yes, frankly. Give me a Younes any day of the week.
Absolutely, absolutely. It sounds like some sort of removals company for lesbians. But but look, it's just gone too far, hasn't it? And this is again, we're going to talk about this later, but this is why you're seeing so many people turning out to vote for reform, particularly working class people and people with common sense, because they've had enough. They know the Tories have done nothing for the last decade to stop this. It's got worse under them. They know that Labour started it all with Tony Blair and now are going to continue the legacy of Blairism as David Cameron and successive Tory governments have done. They've had enough. We've all had enough. We want change. We want this madness to end sooner rather than later, ideally.
Yeah, I mean, Jason on YouTube says we should stop the pollution of our rivers and sea, for example. And I think that's the kind of activism, environmental activism, that absolutely unites everybody, right? But the idea that we should all go back to poverty and immiseration and the kind of energy resources that we had when people born into any of our backgrounds would have died in childbirth, right? That we forget that actually the cheap and reliable, plentiful energy is the source of progress, right? That's why we're all able to do what we're doing right now and the fruits of progress that we've all enjoyed throughout all of our lives. Let's not throw the, environment and progress baby out with the CO2 dogma bathwater. It's really serious.
Yeah,
Yes.
absolutely. And we love the environment. We're Brits. We're environmentalists at heart. We love our countryside. We love our clean waters. We
And
love our
cows.
rivers.
We love cows.
And we love a cow, especially one that's been nicely done in by the Met Police. I mean, if they spent just as much time, I know, that poor thing. But Brits we love the countryside. We love nature. I mean, this is just you're absolutely spot on. This is the kind of environmentalism people want to see. Go protest those massive water companies that they just paid their chief executive a 50% increase in her salary after she managed to get tapeworms into your water. I mean, those are the sorts of people we will all applaud for protesting. But these lot are just out for attention.
Yeah,
absolutely.
one last thing. I think these people, they have no solutions. What's your solution for tackling the environment instead of
making
throwing
us all
stupid
poor
paintings? Exactly. What's your solution? As I said, if you're so smart, I think there was this guy, I forgot his name. He came up with a technology to actually remove plastic from the seas, and it was this machine that you put in the water that removes all the plastic. Go and do something like that, or go and build an electric car like Elon Musk. Go and be creative. Or there is this other guy that found a way that you can extract carbon from the atmosphere. But these people, majority of them are uneducated. You can just tell they have nothing better to do with their lives, and this has become like their sort of their meaning to life, that I'm going to go and protest, and hence why I'm a good person if I go and protest and throw soup or go and throw paintings at Lamborghini or stop traffic, and it's just pathetic when I see
Younes,
these people. Yeah.
guess what? I mean, they're never going to go and make any of those inventions because they'll have nothing else to do. They'll have
that's true.
It's better for them. They won't have anything to complain about. It's the same as LGBT activism. We've got equality. I mean, we're completely equal under the law. But now there's got to be a new thing that they've got to complain about, a new flag, a new protest. It will never end with these people. This is what the British public and Westerners are waking up to. It will never end. If the polar ice caps stop melting, it will be something else. It will always be the next thing to protest.
And the polar bears, they said we need to save the polar bears. Guess what? We've got record levels of polar bears, and yet this still goes on and on and on. I saw that this was a form of pagan ritual, which Stonehenge might have been a part of, right? Where the Wicker Man, and you do human sacrifice in the form of the Wicker Man. Now, people might be familiar with the Wicker Man, the film, and I thought, well, some might suggest that's an all right punishment. But I'm of course not advocating that we actually do burn people alive. But there we are. It's one mode of thought, folks. I don't know what you think about that. Then again, the carbon emissions that you'd get from setting fire to the Wicker Man might be somewhat uncomfortable.
After I saw what they did to Stonehenge, I tweeted that I might just buy a few day trips up to Scotland and the heaviest aircraft I can possibly find, just to offset their nonsense. Because that's the kind of stuff that's how angry it makes me feel. I'm like, do you know what? Screw you lot. I'll do whatever it takes to upend you, or even if the world ends, I'd rather burn than see you lot win.
Yep. No, I agree. Right. Anyway, I want to talk about football. Now, do either of you actually like football? Don't worry, I'm not going to actually talk about football, but you do like football. You do, Younes. Yeah.
I'm a level two. I'm a level two coach. Actually, a bit of background about myself. I'm a level two coach. I don't know if I have my thing here somewhere. And I used to actually work for Chelsea Football Club for 5 years.
Oh wow.
Oh,
Wow.
there you
Wow.
go. Awesome.
Yeah. Well,
awesome.
I mean, I would say I'm impressed, but it's Chelsea Football Club. But anyway, and
I saw your friend Kieran Trippier the other day.
yes, I saw you saw Kieran Trippier. Yeah, he might be leaving Newcastle United, so that's a shame. But anyway, Kylian Mbappe, who is a superstar of all superstars, right? He is a footballing mega star. There is absolutely no limit to his reach internationally. He's as global can possibly be. You know, he is the Taylor Swift of football. And Mbappe had this to say about the French elections. And the reason I mention it is because I am so deeply fed up with every fibre of my being, but of being told by those who have immense wealth, immense privilege, immense lack of self-awareness. They are so out of touch, right, that they might as well be on a private jet way up high, which he often is, much to the dismay of our Just Stop Oil friends. And Kylian here had this to say about the French elections and his plea to voters who are sick of the fact that French citizens come last and the foreign people that are coming into the country seem to always come first at the detriment of the French people, whether that come into welfare, whether that come into the jobs market, whether that come into terrorism and security. But he had this to say nonetheless.
On sait qu'on est dans un moment très important de l'histoire de notre pays, une situation inédite. Donc c'est pour ça que j'ai vraiment envie de m'adresser.
So he says he wants to address the French people and especially the younger generation who can make a difference in this election.
Aujourd'hui, on voit très bien que les extrêmes sont aux portes du pouvoir.
Against the extremists, he uses that word. He says he's against extremists. He refers to himself, by the way, in the third person for some reason. That's maybe a sign of how famous he is. But he talks about how much he wants young people to counter the extremists of the election, and a naked point to the Marine Le Pen and Jordan Bardella, who, by the way, is is a celebrity in his own right. He's a 28-year-old president of the Marine Le Pen's party, and Jordan has criticised Kylian and said, I have a lot of respect for our footballers who are icons of footballs and icons for youth, but we must respect the French. We must respect everyone's vote. When you're lucky enough to have a very, very big salary, when you're a multi-millionaire, then I'm a little embarrassed to see these athletes give lessons to people who can no longer make ends meet, who no longer feel safe, who do not have the chance to live in neighbourhoods overprotected by security agents. And I don't think Jordan Bardella could have put that any better at all, Alex.
Yep, he's absolutely spot on. And do you know what really makes me angry about Mbappe's comments is that he calls this party, is it the Rally National Rally, Marine Le Pen's party, extremists. Now, that's just political jargon for far right. It's the same thing, right? You're calling them extremists. And I put a tweet out, and I thought I nailed it at this point because I was so angry. But yeah, I said, how can he be referring to Marine Le Pen's party is extremists? These are people who have never been in power. Let's remind him that. I assume he means the extremists are the people that have just crashed the economy, destroyed local farming, turned Paris into a shanty town, brought in at least 700,000 illegal immigrants in the last year alone, and have soaring sexual abuse cases. That sounds like extremism to me.
Yeah,
that absolutely sounds like extremism. So to call Marine Le Pen an extremist and to call Jordan Bardella's party extreme is nothing compared to what's been going on, and people can see it. They're not going to buy this narrative anymore.
Younes, Jordan Bardella really has become, I would say, the biggest TikTok politician in Europe right? He has a reach that is absolutely ginormous. I don't know who's got more followers on there, actually. I assume it's him, actually, and not Nigel Farage. But nonetheless, he has this massive reach. He has a ability to connect with younger voters in a way in which is quite exciting for people on the right who have long been told that the older someone gets, the younger someone is, actually, the less likely they are to be conservatives. Well, he's bucking this trend. So Mbappe here is potentially going to alienate a lot of people who go out and used to buy PSG shirts, right? Paris Saint-Germain. Obviously, he's not there anymore, but they will go out, spend their hard-earned money on these shirts, support Kylian in his career, will have done for many years, love him in the French national team. And this just strikes me as a really patronising, condescending way to get involved in the political debate. How about you just follow the lead of Marcus Rashford, who's had a sudden fall from grace? You know, he's not in the England team. Manchester United not going too well for him. And he got involved in politics. Look how that's worked out for him. Do you think actually there's a risk for Kylian as well here?
Yeah, so first of all, I don't really think there's a left and a right anymore. I feel like there's the establishment and the populist. And the far rights are usually the populist people. What is far rights? People that want closed borders. They don't want open borders. That's somehow a far right ideology now. People that don't want the woke nonsense shoved down their throat. They're far right. So unfortunately, people that want common sense and traditionalist values are referred to as far right now. In terms of Kylian Mbappe, his comments are condescending. And look, French people do not want open borders and they don't want massive immigration in their country. Because I saw a video the other day in Champs-Élysées, which is probably one of the most beautiful roads in the whole of Europe.
Well, it used to be.
And basically you had people just sleeping in the streets, like homeless people, Africans, like you can just tell they were immigrants and they didn't have any housing. And they're literally sitting by the side of the road and they've ruined the whole country, you know? And these are genuine concerns. You cannot have open borders. And of course, France is in a geographically disadvantaged position compared to the UK because they're in a landlock in Europe. So a lot of people can come in through Africa and a lot of people can come from their eastern borders. And they have a huge problem with immigrants. I understand that one of the strengths of the French national team was their immigrants. Like if you look at the teams that won the World Cup, they were like 90% black. And the other player that wasn't black was Zinedine Zidane, which is actually an Algerian. So, of course, immigration is good, but you cannot have too many immigrants coming to your own country with open borders because it will drag society down. You want healthy immigration, not unhealthy immigration.
Yeah, you want integration as well. And it's very, very, yes. I can't see a way in which you can integrate when you're bringing, 700,000, 800,000, whatever the numbers are that we've been experiencing. When you're bringing that level of people in, how the hell can you possibly be expected to integrate these people into society? But Kylian in polite society would turn their nose up at that and say that it's racist. I'm just hearing a lot of the comments, by the way, are saying that there's a poll that's come out. Matt Goodwin's posted it, which has Reform on 24%, which is absolutely ginormous. But we'll get on to Reform a bit later on. I'll bring up that poll and we'll discuss some of the polling. But so the EU, in response, by the way, to Marine Le Pen, have demanded cuts in the French budget by the French Treasury. And this comes as the National Rally, the front Marine Le Pen's party and Jordan Bardella's party, which is currently leading in the polls and has promised a fiscal loosening. Now, I see this as naked gerrymandering, right? I see this as the European Union saying, well, we absolutely do not want Marine Le Pen to storm through to become Prime Minister, to become actually the leader of France. She won't become the president, of course, because Emmanuel Macron is in that post until 2027, I believe. But this is an attempt, I think, to say to the French people, don't vote for them or we'll get you, right? Because the French have been allowed for years and years, decades, to be able to get away with flouting the rules when it comes to budget constraints and economic violations within the EU bloc itself, they have only now said, well, we're going to do something about it, when someone that they don't like on the, as Mbappe said, extremist far right, because it starts to stand a chance of getting into power. And this is, I think this vindicates our vote to leave like you wouldn't believe. And I'm sickened, frankly, by this protectionist cartel, these technocratic bureaucrats at the top of Brussels who are anti-democratic in the extreme. Alex?
Yeah, and I think your argument, Darren, is in line with how people in Europe are starting to feel. Only 2 weeks ago we saw that landslide to the right. It hasn't massively moved the dial because the centre and the left are still quite big, but it's the first time in its entire history that the European Union has seen such a massive surge in right-wing parties. And I don't think that trend is going to stop. I think you're going to see that trend replicated in national parliaments next. In fact, the UK might be the only outlier over the next decade not having a right-wing party in government, because what has failed people is this centre-left / far-left agenda that has constantly put their business agenda, the corporate agenda, above the agenda of the people that they have had voted them in. And that rebellion is continuing. We're seeing it happen now in the UK, albeit a little bit late because we haven't had an established party like Reform for a long time. And people are starting to wake up and go, I've had enough of this. There is an alternative, and I'm going to vote for them. Whether you call me any ists or phobe, whatever you like, I don't care. I'm still going to vote for them. And I think that's the place we're at today.
Yes, and the interesting thing, people keep saying, oh, why is the United Kingdom turning left? Well, it's very simple. The United Kingdom's turning left because it's fallen out of love and wants to punish the Conservative and Unionist Party. It's as simple as that. And by the way, I've just reminded myself, Alex, I couldn't figure out, because I'm such a boomer, that's as the kids say, I couldn't figure out how you do a poll on Facebook. So I did a poll on Twitter. And it's running now. And I said, does the Conservative Party deserve to survive? And people are voting on it. We've got 600 votes there so far. So do vote, and we'll let you know the results at the end of this stream. It is on Twitter, unfortunately, which I know a lot of viewers aren't actually on. But I'll figure out how to stop being so silly and technically illiterate, and figure out how to do it on Facebook.
Just to go back to an earlier topic, just while we're talking about Europe and all that, Jordan Bardella on his, I just had some info sent to me, 1.6 million followers on TikTok, and
wow!
And guess what? Farage has 760,000.
He's growing.
This is a platform that is popular with under 25s predominantly.
Yeah.
That is an incredible statistic. I'll try and dig out and find out what Rishi Sunak and the others are on, but those are substantial numbers. Yeah,
I think Rishi Sunak only just joined TikTok. I think actually, I think he joined during this election that he called, or should I say this suicide pact that he called. But
astonishing numbers. Because
I agree.
These are, for young people to be turning and looking. I mean, this is the problem when we do polls of young people. The polls only tend to attract the very politically engaged group. But when you actually talk to the young people that aren't so engaged, they love people like Nigel Farage because they see him talking sense. Anyway.
And Jordan has youth on his side, right? Jordan's going to be able to build up a very interesting movement within France. And it's going to be fascinating to watch. If you thought Brexit was seismic, a national rally-led France would be absolutely catastrophic for the EU establishment.
Exactly.
Younes,
I really do believe that the EU will collapse in the near future because we have a swing to the right and so many countries are fed up with the EU, such as France, even Spain, even more, Italy, all these countries, even Germany, which is like probably the main country in the European Union. They are all fed up and they're all having a swing to the right. The European Union has outlived this purpose, and this whole idea of European superstates is just not landing with people because it took thousands of years for these cultures, for these borders to be established. And once you pull countries into this bureaucratic institution where we have unelected individuals that try to dictate what we do, naturally you're going to have a pushback against that. United Kingdom was the first country to fall, and now you're going to see France, Germany, Spain, Italy, all these countries, and they are frightened to death of this. The globalists are absolutely frightened to death because there is a massive populist movement, not just in Europe, I think all over the world even. In America, if you look at America, Trump joined TikTok, I think within 2 days he had 5 million followers.
Yeah.
So, and the young people are actually following these people. It's not like the far right extremist old 70-year-olds are following these parties. No, it's the young demographics that are having a natural pushback to this whole globalist agenda.
Yes. And that leads me on to this piece that I just read earlier in the Times today that I found really interesting by Ian Martin, a columnist there. And he says that Brexit is becoming unpopular with the British people. I mean, it won't be unpopular with most of our viewers, and it certainly isn't unpopular with, all of the panel. But he says, leaving the EU has been slated as the source of all of our woes, but believe me, it contains the seeds of future prosperity. We've just addressed some of the problems with the European Union there. He says it strengthened our democracy and opened up opportunities in the world that are the basis for future prosperity. He discusses how there will be a few things like delays at Dover getting in and out of the EU as well, with new biometric security at borders. But he says, all of that to one side, the Labour Party saying they want to get close again to the EU, he says, we have sovereignty on our side now, right? So that's why those of us that voted for Brexit would do it again, because people keep saying to me, oh, well, Darren, you voted Brexit for immigration controls. I say, I voted Brexit for sovereignty, right? Which allows us to actually put in place the kind of border regime that we would want to see.
Yes.
We haven't got that. They haven't done that, right? They've done quite the opposite. And now, though, the difference between 2016 and today is that we get to turn around to our politicians, as is happening to the Conservative Party right now, and say, you lied to us, you looked us in the eye and said, trust us, we will get the job done, we will get Brexit done. Trust in us for the first time in your lives, your voting lives, and we will deliver for you. They didn't do that. They betrayed that trust and that vote, but we know who's in the driving seat. It isn't this technocracy within the European Union. It's the British people. It's not the British people, it's the British politicians. And we're able to turn around and say, yeah, it's on you. And he also mentions the OBR figures, all showing, by the way, that we are outgrowing, it might be at a snail's pace, but we are outgrowing the EU. And a whole host of other figures and facts and figures, FDI, foreign direct investment, all of these other things that prove Brexit was the right thing to do. The AUKUS relationship, which is our partnership with Australia I was going to say New Zealand, but it's not, because they went a bit dodgy, didn't they, under that? What was she called? The woman that could eat an apple through a letterbox? Jacinda Ardern, that's her name.
That's it.
Yes, all of these other things. So on defence and cooperation, actually, Brexit's been really beneficial as well. So I just thought that was worth noting, right? I just thought that was in the context of talking about what's going on in Europe right now. We are ahead of them. We have bucked the trend, and I think we're in a better position. And I just severely hope with all of my heart that the Labour Party don't kill Brexit in all but name, you know? So
I don't know if they will. I don't think they've got the political capital to do that, if I'm being honest with you. They may have the seats, but I still think, I actually saw an interview with Rachel Reeves. I think she was on with Alistair Campbell and Rory Stewart. And she even said openly to them, because they were, of course, pushing for a second referendum or just no referendum, take it straight out. And she said that of her own constituency, when I go out and speak to people, they still would vote today to leave all over again. And so I think the political capital isn't there. And I don't think they'll be stupid enough to do that, because they'd be out on their asses.
Yeah, that's
but
very
also,
true.
I don't think we've got Brexit. I don't think what we've got right now is Brexit. I really don't, because I was interviewing this gentleman called Ben Habib, one of the reform candidates.
Oh, we all know Ben, yeah.
Yeah, so he said that he was a Brexiteer, and the whole point of Brexit was that you come out of this bureaucratic institution, which is the European Union, of 28 countries, so you can join the other 163 countries, and you can start trading with them openly and make your own laws and be a sovereign nation. And what we got now is like half in, half out. It's not really Brexit. To some extent, we are still bound by European laws. To some extent, it's not full Brexit, so it's like 50%. It's a halfway house, unfortunately. And the Boris Johnson and Theresa May, all these people have failed to negotiate Brexit properly, and that's why Tories where they are at the moment in the polls.
Yeah, weak leadership. That's what it is. Right, I'll move us away from the EU then and to discussing some of these very interesting polls that have been coming out. And we'll start with this one that a lot of viewers have been raising with us in the comment sections of various social media platforms. This is Matt Goodwin's Substack. And he says, state of the race, bombshell poll, reform surge with 15 days to go. So, almost, it's 2 weeks tomorrow until the general election. And here are the numbers.
Zoom in a bit, Darren.
Pardon?
Can you zoom in just a little bit, please? Yeah, there we go.
And the polling has been conducted by People Polling, which is Matt Goodwin's own firm, and it has 1,228 adults for GB News, actually, to how they're going to vote in the election. And here are the numbers. Labour 35%, Reform 24%, Conservatives 15%, Liberal Democrats 12%, Greens 8%, SNP 3%. SNP 3%, but they'll still get a disproportionate reach from the BBC, who aren't having Reform on, by the way, their Question Time special, which I think I said the BBC are showing their bias on this one when it comes to being anti-reform. But exactly. before I bring you both in, so that's that poll. Then Sky News have a poll, which was conducted by YouGov, and it's an MRP poll, which is supposed to be industry standard. And I'll just zoom in so you can see Alex's old eyes aren't what they used to be. And so it's showing the Labour Party would be on 425 seats, the Conservatives on 108 seats, Lib Dems on 67, SNP on 20, Reform on 5, Plaid Cymru on 4, Greens on 2, and then it's got other 18. So Reform on 5 in that particular poll. And then there's Savanta by The Telegraph. There's been a slurry of polls, so forgive me for just quickly running through them. But this exclusive survey for The Telegraph by, who conducted this one? It was Comres, wasn't it? Savanta, where does it tell me? Yes, Savanta Comres. So Savanta found that the Conservatives would be on 53 seats, so vastly different, by the way, from that 108 seats in the Sky News poll. But it's saying the Conservatives on 53 seats, Labour on 516, which is just completely unprecedented, and the Liberal Democrats on 50, which would almost put them as Ed Davey as leader of the opposition, which wouldn't be much in the way of opposition, right? Because they both agree with each other. Yeah. So frankly, you would have a House of Commons majority for the left of 566 seats, which would just be...
Well, actually, Darren, let's just consider that the people that will be left, the MPs that will be left of the Conservative Party will not be the right-wingers. They will be the left of the party. So actually, you've really got almost zero opposition in terms of centre-ground, centre-left policies that even the Tories have been pursuing themselves the last few years. So really, you have no opposition.
You have led me very nicely onto this story, which I also saw. As you know by now, there is always method to my madness. And it says here, and it's got a picture of Cameron just to really hit home the point that Alex has just raised rightly. Tory moderates set to dominate party after the election. The Times has found that a majority of Conservative MPs likely to be elected in July will come from the party's so-called centre ground. Now, I believe actually the common sense majority in this country who are pro-border controls, anti-immiserating ourselves through net zero, and all all of these other policies. I would say they're in the centre ground, and it's these people that are the extremists. But putting that to one side, Alex's point is right, Younes, that the Conservative Party that will be left is going to be a Cameroon party that didn't win Boris Johnson's 2019 majority, didn't secure Brexit. He, of course, scarpered as soon as he lost the EU referendum after trying to make us all shit ourselves into voting Remain, and a whole host of other things. And Jason on YouTube says Lib Lab Con Uni Party, and this is what we've got to look forward to. And I cannot stress this enough, but a Conservative Party that has the likes of, he's obviously in the Lords now, but that Cameron consensus running through it, the sort of the people that it says will be left are, not your Priti Patels and other people like that who backed Liz Truss. It wouldn't be the Common Sense group or the New Conservatives. It would actually be this guy here, who is Will Tanner, who is in the Prime Minister. He is in number 10 right now. He's a staffer in number 10. And he's going to become an MP. And it'll be people like him, these wets that have destroyed the Conservative Party. And I cannot stress enough how uncomfortable I would feel to vote for that party. Who in the right mind would? The Conservative Party is going to die, Younes.
Exactly. And as Nigel Farage said, Conservatives and Labour, they're different sides to the same coin, as we call it, the uni party. So there's no real opposition. But then the bigger question I have is that how can reform be on 24% and only be projected to win 5 seats? That's not representative democracy, And at the same time, Nigel Farage should be on stage with Keir Starmer and Rishi Sunak having a freeway debate.
Yeah.
And that happened back in the day, I remember, with David Cameron, Gordon
Nick
Brown,
Clegg.
I think it was, and Nick Clegg, yeah. So I don't understand why Nigel Farage is not on there. And I think he would clean the house with them.
Oh,
Completely.
he would.
If there was a freeway debate between Nigel Farage, Keir Starmer, and Rishi Sunak, you would see jumps in the polling. But then again, the mainstream media and the establishment don't want to give us any airtime. They've tried to discredit us. They try to call us far-right extremist racists. But deep down, I think they really, really worry about us. And they're really scared of us, the same way they were scared of Trump back in 2016. And as a matter of fact, I think reform will do a lot better than people think. And the mainstream media is trying to stop that. The problem is that reform can have millions of votes up and down the country. Yeah.
Oh, it will.
They can finish second in every single constituency, and they might end up with 5 seats only. So the same thing happened to the UKIP party, where they had 4 million votes and they had 1 seat. So we need to encourage people and tell them, especially the Tory voters, the Conservatives, and also Labour voters, because I think like a lot of Labour voters, they don't really like this new look Labour. They just vote in Labour because they're so fed up with the Conservatives. And I call them the politically homeless people. We have to encourage the politically homeless and the ex-Conservatives and ex-Labour to vote for reform, because I have a good feeling that we can win a lot more since that.
Alex, don't talk about the electoral system, because there's another piece. Younes has predicted the future, as you just did, and I have a piece on that very point coming up in a second. But just explain to us, because one of our viewers on YouTube says that he thinks Cameron being back says it all enough as it is, right? That the Conservative Party was already moving in that direction. So, do they have a death wish, Alex?
It seems to me there's this massive reality distortion field around many of the sort of, I wouldn't call them senior Tories, but they're sort of these high activists in the party. They sort of sit at the top of all these subgroups in the Conservative Party, the LGBT Tories, the One Nation Conservatives, who really do sort of set the agenda with the party. They've become so brainwashed by their own dogma that they can't see that the country is dissatisfied with what they've done. They've been out the last week. We saw Jeremy Hunt ask for applause last night from an event that he went to for an applause for the astonishing work that the government's done the last decade.
Oh my word.
And it's just this reality distortion filled problem that they have, and they've been having this for months in the lead up to the election. It was the same when they called the general election early. They thought by calling it early they might actually somehow, in whatever crazy spur of imagination they had, that they might win the election. And, it really is that bad. This is what happens when you've been in government for too long with a massive majority, and then you bring Brutus in that killed Caesar to think that he can maintain that majority without the charisma, without the passion, without the sort of celebrity that Boris carried.
Yeah.
And so, we know a few of these people, Darren. We know a few of these high Tories who seem to think that the sun shines out of Cameron's backside. He is part of the problem with the Conservative Party, not the solution. They're constantly trying to drag it to the centre, when actually the public mood has shifted, and the left have shifted so far that the party's going along with it, slowly but surely.
Yeah, I honestly, seeing all of this, I'm done with the Conservative Party. But that leads me on to the next question then, which is, and by the way, look at the colour of this that I'm sipping out of. My little sippy cup is a. I'm not going to say who I'm voting for, but maybe you can infer something from this. And the fact of the matter is that, and Younes has already commented on this. So the problem we have in this country is that the electoral system protects the uni party, right? It keeps the uni party in power. And Tim Stanley, who is a columnist at the Telegraph, Telegraph even, who I respect and admire very much. I think he's a very good writer. And he says, actually, Labour's coming dictatorship destroys the case for first past the post, which is our current electoral system. Britain is already voting as if it has proportional representation, he says, but the system is delivering Soviet-style majorities, which is Younes's point earlier. And Tim says if this poll proves accurate, he's talking about the Telegraph poll, which I'll just remind viewers, says that the Conservatives would be on 53 and Labour on 516. He says if actually these polls are correct and that there is a Soviet-style majority in the Commons, Tory second in vote share, yet almost third in seats. The Lib Dems third in vote share, yet within a whisker of forming His Majesty's opposition. Reform on absolutely nothing. Then you call into question, frankly, the entire premise of British democracy. It doesn't exist, right? We are living in a state in which, there is a cabal at the top which says you can only vote for these two parties. And even if millions of people, more than UKIP secured in 2015 rather, actually Reform winning more than that vote, which was worthy and large in and of itself, they still won't secure a single seat. That would be a complete farce and a travesty against democracy. So he's saying actually what first past the post was never meant to do was create a dictatorship, and Labour's landslide of this size amounts to just that. He says under the system, a parliamentary majority can do whatever it wants. Brexit, whether a left-wing government with barely any opposition, the Lib Dems, as I already mentioned, they wouldn't be in opposition. They agree with the Labour Party on everything. It would mean 5 years of driving the country in a fully left direction with no checks or balances, even if the country will have voted against it or abstained. So that begs the question then. I am now firmly of the view that we really do need to get rid of first past the post, and that should be a key priority for Nigel Farage's campaigning efforts over the next few years, because it will be a damn disgrace and create voter apathy on an unprecedented scale if there is this groundswell of support for reform, as we're seeing blow up right now within all of the comment sections across all of the platforms that we're on. If reform get absolutely no parliamentary recognition, despite the millions and millions of people that will come out and vote for it. I mean, I don't want to sound like a sort of miserable Mystic Meg, Alex, but that's the path that we're heading on.
Yeah, you're right, and look, I highly doubt that day is going to come. If I'm being entirely honest with you,
Yeah, so why would
there is
they let it
only
happen, you know? But
why
they said
would
that
they?
about
And
Brexit, by the way, Alex. They said that about Brexit, and
well,
look, we had a
well,
referendum.
that's true. That's true,
Yeah,
but they did have UKIP clipping on their heels, and it was a Conservative government. And David Cameron was emboldened by his win up in Scotland and thought he could win another one and put this issue to bed. It was very important the Conservatives addressed the issue of the European Union within the party. This, however, is not a priority for Labour, and it's never going to be because first past the post works exceptionally well for the Labour Party. Now, what I will say about the potential, I mean, this is far fetched, but the Liberal Democrats becoming the official opposition is that one of the biggest things they will campaign for is proportional representation of some kind, because this also
Yeah.
benefits the Liberal Democrats massively. So that might be the only saving grace of having Ed Davey, who I think is a total clown as it is. I mean, look at the way he's run his election. But the
yeah,
only saving grace would be that they would go for some sort of PR. AV, which they did campaign for before under Nick Clegg, was rejected quite substantially, if you remember. But what I was going to say about Nigel is that I suspect his big message the day after the election, because Reform look like they're going to come second in potentially 150 seats on a poll a lot smaller than that one. But this
wow,
is a substantial opposition.
that's
This
a
is
lot.
real opposition. It is a lot. So
Yeah.
if you're Nigel Farage, the day after the election, or the day that the election is called, you're able to go out and say, yes, we might have 3 seats, 4 seats, 7 seats, 2 seats, whatever it is, but you can see the appetite for change is here. And our electoral system does not offer the people a voice. It offers them this supermajority, which people
Yeah.
haven't voted for. So that's an extremely powerful message. And Nigel will be able to start attracting, hopefully, Labour voters as well as more Tory voters to say, I'm the one realigning British politics to what the people want. And he can demonstrate that with Brexit. He can demonstrate it with another referendum.
Yeah, I agree. Well said. Proportional representation on YouTube, just to add some balance to what we said. Twice Forsaken says proportional representation has to be carefully considered before implementation, as it can be a poor system if implemented wrongly. Jason says we want a decent version of proportional representation.
Yeah.
Of course, the version that was suggested in 2011 when we had a referendum on it, well, it wasn't proportional representation. It was some halfway house. But what do you
AV.
say? Yeah, AV. Yeah, exactly. But what
Alternative
vote? Yeah. Younes, what do you say to those people that say, well, I think we should keep the electoral system as it is because I like the constituency link. I like the fact that there is an MP for my constituency that I can write to. And by the way, I used to live in Battersea. And I remember writing to my MP when I was being investigated by the police for interviewing Dr. David Starkey, who viewers will be aware of, and they're probably aware of the events that took place during the BLM years. And I wrote to my MP and said, this has just happened. And of course, I was completely ignored. So having a constituency link, it's completely irrelevant if you're on the reform right of politics. They don't care about you. So why care about the constituency link when your MPs are utterly useless?
Exactly. And I believe in proportional representation. What we have in this country is not proportional representation. Even in America, it's not, because then you have different states. And for example, if you live in a state in Wyoming in America, your vote is worth 5 times more than someone living in California. And it's the same in the United Kingdom. If you live in London, and London is going to be dominated by Labour, and all like these Midland countries, your vote is going to have a lot more power compared to someone else. And I think personally, if I was going to propose a system, I would say it should be based on popular vote. And I know that will be a complete revamp, and I don't think that will fit in with the whole parliamentary system. But if I had to choose, I'd say, okay, well, Labour got 40% of the votes, we'll give them 40% of the seats. Reform won 26% of the votes, we give them 26% of the seats. And I'll just spread it out that way. And I would just get rid of this whole MP idea. Because as you said, what does your MP actually do? I don't remember. I don't even know who my MP is. Like, I didn't know back in the day. I know he's great cast. But who, like, I'm asking the viewers now, who can name their MP right now? I bet 90% of you can't. and they're pretty
You know
useless
what? I
as you
actually
say.
can't name my MP, and I'm a deeply political person. And where I am right now,
Exactly.
I
So,
can't remember his
and
name.
at the end of the day, people don't even vote for their MPs. They just vote for Conservative or Labour or Reform, and they vote for that leader. And we should get rid of this system. It's
And
not proportional
Featherstone
representation.
Yeah.
raises the salient point that the only other person that is near us is Belarus, which has first past the post. So let's keep first past the post to be more like Belarus. Woo!
Yeah, look. The one thing I will say to the viewers is this, because it's important they hear a balanced argument. Because I know, look, the reason why a lot of us are so passionate about this now is because there's a party that needs this system to get into power that won't otherwise. And that's why there's a lot of passion about this. But I will say this to the viewers: there will be other parties that you massively dislike that will get in with substantial seats as well. We're talking about George Galloway's Workers' Party, potential. You're talking about potential religious-based parties like a Muslim party, for example. The Green Party will be exceptionally more powerful. So and parties fall in and out of favour with the masses, and we do open the door to them to have a much bigger say. There's a reason why all the small parties want this system. Now, I do believe that under first past the post, Reform could still win. Not this election, I don't think. I think this would be the shock of this. It would be bigger than Brexit if Reform managed to scrape in even opposition in this election. But 2029, when they've actually established themselves and have got a proper party and a proper system in place, we can still win, because the British public do turn their eye and their attention to sensible parties. So let's see. PR would be the quickest route, and it would be the fastest route, and I think it's the best system. But we have to remember that we do allow other more extreme parties to get in that will be very, very, very bad for Britain.
Yeah, well, I agree George Galloway's party would be, but you say a Muslim party, but I would argue that actually George Galloway's party already is, right? It's the party of religious sectarianism in this election. I think sunlight is the best disinfectant. I think I'd rather these people be out in the open making these crazy ideas about, what they want to do to our country, and have their ideas challenged within the House of Commons. I think I'm all for that, to be honest. Go on.
A really interesting point. Obviously, part of Starmer's manifesto is to remove the House of Lords over time and replace it with some sort of Senate.
He said he's not going to do that anymore.
As he scrapped it, has he? How typical.
He's just setting term limits. Yeah, he's just setting term limits. Yeah,
it's a start, right? It's a start to that. It's a start in that direction. So I wonder eventually if there'll be pressure groups within the Labour Party who want to see that system, and what system they propose is there. Perhaps they will propose a PR system for potential elected lords at some point.
Right. This is the last poll. Then I've got a topic about London's latest diversity posters, which I'm sure you're all. I definitely want to hear what Younes has to say about this. But this final poll, Farage set to win Clacton with the biggest swing in modern history. The Times say that this poll puts Reform on course for 42% of the vote in the Essex race. Responding to the poll, Farage said, "I think many people are going to be very surprised on July 4th. And it has Reform on 42%, the Tories on 27%, and Labour on 24%. Now, that would be seismic, and as it says, it's biggest swing in modern history. So that would be extraordinary in and of itself. And this is receiving rewards in the form of a Muslim entrepreneur who has given Reform its biggest donation of the campaign by a man called Zia Yusuf, who co-founded a luxury concierge app and sold it for a nice, cool 233 million quid. Must be nice. But anyway, he's backed Reform, and he said that immigration's too high. But he did say the vast majority of Muslims in the country were patriots, and also believe that net migration is too high. He says illegal challenge crossings are an affront to all hardworking British people, but not least the migrants who played by the rules and came legally, which I'm sure we all agree with. And he says that net migration was 50,000 when his parents arrived in Britain, which is a much more... you're much more able to absorb those kinds of numbers than you are the numbers that we experience today. And I think things are very exciting for reform. I really do. And then they obviously had their manifesto launch on Monday of this week, and they're talking about things like on immigration, recognising the security threat of mass migration and illegal migration, freezing non-essential immigration. So doctors and nurses would be okay, everyone else no. Deporting foreign criminals, stopping illegal undocumented labour, affecting British citizens' opportunities in life, whether that be young people, whether that be people in and out of factory work, for example. Cutting overpaid consultant contracts in government, cutting foreign aid by 50%, which would save £6 billion. Stopping the Bank of England paying interest to commercial banks on quantitative easing reserve. That's 30 to 40 billion rather. And a dedicated veterans department, increase in defence spending, NHS cutting bureaucracy and unnecessary managers, the DEI stuff. On that point, they would get rid of the Equality Act. Policing and justice, zero tolerance on crime, income tax to start from £20,000, lifting corporation tax to £100,000, a whole host of things for young people, student loan interest scrapped, reform of the BBC, stopping the EU taking UK fish quotas, which the Labour Party say they might be willing to give up for a better deal with the EU, expanding Navy overseas patrol and increasing the farming budget to £3 billion. There's a lot of that it's a real national conservative platform. You know, it's placing the country ahead of the kind of globalism and seat at a table that Sir Keir Starmer longs for. I hate that expression. Britain needs a seat at the table. I'm sick of the sodding table, frankly. What has the table done for us recently? Not a lot. I'd like to throw him over the table. Actually, that sounds a bit sexual. I didn't mean that at all. Moving swiftly on. This is a good set of policies, Younes, isn't it? And this could be why we're seeing such an unprecedented bounce for reform in these polls.
Yeah, I actually done a complete breakdown of the reform contract with the people because they don't like to use the word manifesto.
Yes. Sorry, I shouldn't have used manifesto.
But I mean, there's a lot of great points. The video is going to come out tomorrow, but you know, they actually tackle a lot of the issues we spoke on this program. They're going to scrap DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, which I think is a brilliant idea. They're going to stop teaching LGBTQ in schools, which again, so they're going to stop this whole woke ideology. They're the only party that's standing up to globalism. They're the only party that's standing up to this whole woke gender madness ideology. They're the only people that's standing in front of the woke ideology, and at the same time they're going to come out of European Convention for Human Rights, which will help us in terms of stopping immigration. So I think all round the policies are amazing.
Yeah. I saw a load of people saying, "Oh, how horrible that we're leaving the ECHR" on Twitter today, and I replied saying, "Yeah, how awful, being like those famous fascist states, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, who don't rely on the input of foreign courts. How awful! That would be terrible." It's an absurdity that's reaping rewards for reform, isn't it, Alex? And I mean, are you proud to be a member? Because Steve says we need to join, donate and support reform. He says it just makes bloody common sense.
Yeah, and membership's been skyrocketing for reform the last few days, and I suspect there'll be a big number soon. I reckon they might even get to 80k before the election's over. That's going to be a big time for them, but I think they will quickly get more members. You know what's interesting about their policies is that this is what a lot of Conservatives have been crying out for so long. I mean, imagine if 10% of these policies were in the Conservative Party manifesto in the last few weeks, then they might not be having this problem in the polls. It really does go to show when you hear a manifesto like that. Look, I think some of it would, if they got into government, they would need to have revisit this manifesto, because I think they would spook the markets, who are very centre ground, and they wouldn't like this immediately. I would say how to approach that in government would be to do it into stages, break it down over years, and prioritise what the British people want first, and then go through, because there's a lot of change they're proposing. All I support, by the way, but you've got to do things in a way that works for the economy. But look, this is just what we've been crying out for years, and I just can't fathom who at the top of the Conservative Party is assigning this agenda. I mean, the Cameronites are just so far away from what their traditional base want. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, it is. It really, really is. A lot of the comments here coming in thick and fast. Thank you very much for doing so. On Facebook, I've just seen a comment that I've now lost. I hate it when that happens. Oh, there. Carol says, great show, Darren Grimes. Thank you very much, Carol. And as well as supporting reform, you could consider supporting Reasoned UK, of course. Reasoned.uk is the web link that you need. Subscribe on YouTube. We post content every single day. And then a lot of people saying, Always Pooh, who's a fan favourite, says ECHR is against sovereignty and therefore anti-Britain. I agree with that. Right. Let's move away from the... Younes, you wanted to say something?
No.
Oh, let's move away then from polls and on all of this. I was going to show you some funny videos that GB News put out, actually, but where Americans didn't know who Rishi Sunak was, but they do know who Nigel Farage is. And I find that quite amusing, actually. But let's do... I'm trying to think what we should do first. Let's do Starmer and Khan first, because this was something Younes was very keen to get stuck into. Let's have a watch of this campaign video by Sir Keir Starmer and Sadiq Khan, the Mayor of London. Is that big enough, Alex? Can you see it with your old eyes?
F off, Darren.
What's that? What are they doing?
It's
I thought they were
a really
kiss.
important time for the Muslim community. So I just wanted to ask you how you and your family actually celebrate Eid.
We all go to the mosque in the morning. We have something sweet to eat in the morning, and then it's a day you spend with your family, visiting family and friends. It's a day of celebration.
Hajj is so important, and many people will be coming back from that.
Well, Hajj is one of the 5 pillars of Islam. Every Muslim who can afford to do so once in a lifetime is required to go to Mecca, and many of your constituents and people across the country have been going to Mecca to perform pilgrimage. They're returning now after Hajj.
But there is this theme coming up, which is about the problem with visas. And obviously, if we are able to come in and form a government, I think we're going to have to increase the quota. Have you picked this up as well?
The Saudi government has reduced
that's what we need. Visas with Saudi.
To go to Hajj from this country. So many who want to go, who can afford to go,
and it's such a big and important thing that there's a real frustration that people are not being able to go.
So anything we can do to lobby the Saudi government to get more places for British Muslims would be appreciated.
Because it's Eid, it is
Piano.
Also a time, I think, where all of us are able to celebrate the incredible contribution that Muslims have made to our country. We see it in business, we see it in culture.
We've seen it since October 7th.
One of the things that is coming up over and over again is Islamophobia. And well, you can see the stats, you can see the numbers rising, particularly since October the 7th. Although we shouldn't fall into the trap of thinking that before October the 7th, this was all heading in the right direction. It's been far too high for far too long. Clearly, we need to just say over and over again, Islamophobia is intolerable. It can never, ever be justified. And we have to continue with a zero tolerance approach. And I think there's more we can do in government. There's certainly stuff online which I think needs tackling.
Yeah, online, your speech. They're coming for your speech. Islamophobia in the name of your speech.
Means you'll be thinking about the strategy we can use to make sure we take action against those who break the law.
It has a massive impact on people and their lives, their feeling about being able to walk around their own, communities, their streets, their places of work or whatever it may be.
He's nodding his head. What's he done to London? Is London safe?
I've seen so many cases for myself.
What excites me, though, because I've been campaigning across the country. We've got so many
I
Labour
bet he's
candidates who are
excited.
Muslim, who are Hindu, who are Sikh,
Yeah.
who are Jewish, who are Christian. I think, our candidates are the most diverse we've ever had.
Oh,
It's the best
whoop-de-doo!
team I think the Labour Party has ever put forward for an election. But look, this is a time of great celebration, and I do say Eid Mubarak, my friend, and thank you for sharing with me how you celebrate with your family. My very best wishes to you, to the whole Muslim community, and Eid al-Adha.
Thank you, Keir. Thanks very much.
Right, so
Oh, it's
I'm
so
just
cringe
off to
hearing
be
you try to
sick.
pronounce these
Exact.
words.
Oh, I know.
Oh.
It's vomit inducing. It really, really is.
my goodness.
But that
Yeah.
one of the
Not
comments.
again, not again, please.
No, I'm not
Just
playing it
pause
again.
it then.
Alex says anti-Semitism is fine though, Starmer, and this is all. It just knocks me sick. Actually, it really, really does. He's talking about diversity is our strength. Islamophobia is the problem. It's the right wing people. We need to tackle their speech online. They're saying nasty things about people. They're saying that their country's going in the wrong direction, and that actually, partly to blame for that is the insurgents of Islam. And I think that's irrefutable. I think we do have a real problem with radical Islam in this country. And Younes, I'm very keen to know what your takeaway is from that vomit-inducing video.
I mean, Keir Starmer is the biggest virtue signaling idiot I've ever seen in my whole life. I can just tell he doesn't know the first thing about Islam. And he just sat there nodding his head like a lapdog and trying to get the Islamic vote. But let me say a few things to Mr. Keir Starmer. First of all, who decides what's Islamophobic? If I question certain parts of Quran or Hadiths or life of Muhammad, am I Islamophobic and should I come after? I come from a Muslim background. I have family members that are Muslim. So you're going to stop me from having a educated opinion, something that Keir Starmer doesn't have. And the word Islamophobia is a made-up word because phobia means fearing something without evidence. Islam has reason to believe. If you read the Quran, like I have many times, multiple times, and I think I had a copy here actually somewhere, I don't know where it is, but I have read the Quran multiple times, and there's a lot of call to action. There's a lot of call to jihad. There's a lot of call to Christians and Jews being killed. There's a lot of call to forcing Islam and Islamification of the whole world. And that's just the Quran. Then you look at the Hadiths, which is 100 times worse than the Quran. Then you have the life of Muhammad, which took part in 29 offensive battles and killed thousands of people personally. Okay? So if you come and speak about that, which is historic truth, and factual truth, are you considered Islamophobic? And what constitutes hate speech? That's the age-long question.
Yeah.
And that's what they do to stop freedom of speech. Okay? No idea,
Yeah.
and I don't mean just Islam, any idea, Islam, Christianity, Judaism, communism, capitalism, whatever you name it, nothing is beyond questioning, nothing is beyond criticism. And that's not hate speech, that's freedom of speech, something which Keir Starmer doesn't understand.
Yes, I mean, I've been accused, as Alex well knows, of Islamophobia over recent days, and and that I if you were to criticize Christianity in the same way, then you would be absolutely fine. But if you do it about Islam, Islam is completely beyond reproach, and that's not healthy for democratic consensus, Alex.
Yes, absolutely. And do you know what's super concerning about this, guys? And most people, look, we haven't seen the effects of this policy yet, but the online safety bill that went through, it earlier this year or late last year? This is going to hand powers to organizations like Ofcom. And what the bill does, it makes these platforms like Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook accountable for what people post on them. And so not only will these platforms be forced under new laws that the Labour Party will put in, and I guarantee they will put a lot of social policy forward in this next Parliament, it will make you and your platform accountable and to be held legally accountable for what you say, which means they're going to clamp down on your freedom of speech online quite dramatically. You know, all those bots who go on when GB News on TV and they start spamming Ofcom as soon as they hear something they don't like. They literally watch it to spam Ofcom. You're going to get them on the internet too. So this is an extremely dangerous Orwellian future we're headed to. And you can imagine with a super majority of whatever it is, hundreds of 500 seats or more, even 450 seats that Labour are going to get, somebody and a big group of them will be pushing for this censorship.
Yeah, and Joe has a good point. She agrees with Younes. Joe says on YouTube, she says all hate speech laws are a threat to democracy, and I do agree with that. I've always been confused around hate crime laws and all these other things, and I'm the proud recipient of a non-crime hate incident, by the way. But the hate crime legislation, it makes no difference to me if I've been battered because I'm gay or I've been battered just for being battered. You know. I've been assaulted all the same. I don't know what my who I go to bed with, what that has to do with the fact that someone has just broken the law. The whole thing, this panoply of hate crime legislation, is just making life more miserable and impossible in a quagmire of identity politics. That's what this all is. And the sooner we wake up to that, the better. But speaking about identity politics, this is the other thing that Sadiq Khan's London has done. So Pride in London is the initiative that the Mayor's Office put together to support London's LGBTQ plus alphabet asylum. And it says these are some of the posters that have been released. And it says London's Pride and Joy, and it's got a picture of two lesbians there. One, I think one of them is an Asian lady, and then the other one is a black woman. And then we built this city with a big butch black lesbian on this other poster here. And I said, bald, butch, black women built London. I said, this is news to our ancestors. You know, I think Sir Winston Churchill would have had a few things to say about that, for example. You're not... And then this reply I thought was really good from Nicholas Franklin on Twitter, who says, go away, Sir Keir Starmer. The propaganda and daily anti-white hate on display is trickling through younger generations through all forms of media. That it's always been like this, with massive overrepresentation of their presence, when it's a modern suicide created since the 1970s. They also like to amplify the Windrush meme, as if 900 migrants built the nation up after the war, when the reality is Britain was fully rebuilt after World War II by the mid-1950s. I wouldn't say Britain was fully rebuilt after World War II, by the way. I think in the 1950s, life was very, very much difficult for people. But I don't think migrants rebuilt Britain. You know, none of those blokes there who are rebuilding bombed, shattered Britain look to me to be especially black and minority ethnic compliant. So why is this happening, right? Why do Sadiq Khan and his political allies have this penchant for suggesting that actually these narratives that life is a Netflix Bridgerton episode instead of actual historical fact and evidence? You know, we had Anne Boleyn being represented by Channel 5 as a black woman. We've seen a whole host of things in which our history is changed and adapted to be palatable to the diversity gods. Younes, how do we tackle all of this? Do you think I'm racist for saying that?
No, not at all. You cannot change history. And I always find it ridiculous where they put a black actor in a Viking series. Like, there was no black people in the Viking era, you know, and I just don't get it. Like, why are you putting these characters? And it just makes me laugh. And it makes me sad that they put all these, you know, minority actors, not necessarily black, but as you said, in Bridgerton and all these other places. And it's
Which
just
is shit.
historically wrong. And by the way, other thing happened recently. I think it was Google AI. And they asked Google AI to draw George Washington, I think it was, and then it drew George Washington as a black person. And I was like, what kind of coding has gone into that? And that's really dangerous, because you're coding AI software.
It was the founding
in the wrong
fathers.
way.
It was the founding fathers.
Yeah.
It was the founding fathers. Yeah.
Exactly. And you're coding AI, which will be the future of this world, in the wrong way. You feed in it the wrong information, which will have a compound effect over a long while. And look, again, we've talked about this subject a lot, but it's all identity politics. I was watching Sadaghiani again, and he was in an interview, and she was talking to this woman. Are you going to apologize for supporting the racist Donald Trump? Are you going to apologize? All he talks about is racism, Islamophobia, and it makes me think he's the racist. A person that's so adamant on calling other people racist, he's the racist. And we just need to stop, because I'm really tired of it. And as a matter of fact, it undermines people like me, like hardworking ethnic minority people that have come to this country to adapt and assimilate, that are extremely proud, but at the same time, we speak the truth. These people, they just virtue signal Diane Abbott, Sadiq Khan, and they just hide behind that. And the whole thing is a bubble, the whole thing is a lie.
Yes. One of the comments has just reminded me, well said, Younes. One of the comments has said, is a gay man that, hang on, I'm on the wrong screen, is a gay man who says he fears Islamism being Islamophobic, or is this merely self-preservation? And it reminded me of this video from this month in London, where this guy is followed by a woman who is dressed as what can only be described a Teletubby. And she says this. So she's screaming. She's screaming at him and pointing vociferously, saying it's a sin to be gay, it's a sin to be gay. So Doddy's point on YouTube is a salient one, Alex, at this time, isn't it? And to be able to counter these things, you have to be able to speak freely. And as you sagely mentioned, we're increasingly living in a heavily regulated world, the internet, especially. Sakir Starmer there just said he wants to regulate the internet further to get rid of speech online. This is a really troubling time. Can I not call that woman and tell her to F off and say that I am weary of what she actually stands for and the kind of vision she has for Britain? I won't be able to say that, potentially, in the not-too-distant future.
Well, I wonder if he turned around and said something about Islam to her, whether they'd both be in prison for hate criming each other. That's the kind of nonsense we're getting to. You know, this is where these laws lead you to, is that everyone goes to prison, because there won't be anything left that you can say that isn't groupthink or groupspeak, whatever it was called by Orwell. And that is, unfortunately, the future we have, at least for the next 5 years. But I do believe there is this massive counter wave washing across Europe. We've had enough. And British people are extremely sensible people. We're actually conservative in most respects, with a small c. And once these laws start coming through thick and fast, you'll see parties like Reform, parties like Le Pen's National Rally will surge in the polls. They will surge to new levels. In fact, we might even get a Labour-style victory for Reform in less than a decade if this carries on. So, but to literally, what do we call this? Blackwashing London, blackwashing the history. It's nonsense. And even sensible black people and people, Muslim people. My stepfather's a Muslim. He's from Iran. He came here 40 years ago, and he hates what's going on now. He even said to me the other week, and he said, "There's too many immigrants here." And he said, "I didn't come to Britain for it to be the same as what's happening in Iran. I came to Britain because it's Britain."
Well, that's what Younes says as well.
Live in a country of these values. And they're both right. Younes and my stepfather, absolutely spot on. We've had enough. People who want to come here for a better life are always welcome. People who want to come and work hard are always welcome. Brits are not anti-immigrant. They are anti this culture that's being shoved down their throats. It's a big difference.
Benny says children today don't know what they don't know and are either not being educated about the history of the United Kingdom. And a recent study said if young children actually thought that Churchill was the dog from the advert and not Sir Winston Churchill, which is pretty damn depressing in and of itself. There's a lack of history. It's a rewriting of history. But this is Marxism 101, is it not, Younes? You've sounded the alarm on this all the time. This is what they do. It's a rewriting history. It's to actually say, you mentioned George Orwell. It's to say, well, history didn't exist. We've rewritten it.
Exactly. And they say people that try to rewrite history, they try to agree on a set of lies that never existed to fit their own narrative. So unfortunately, as I said before, we have a rise in neo-Marxism, we have a rise in wokeism, and we have a rise in Islamism. And these three things are going to be the downfall of the West. The sooner we deal with these problems and the sooner people unite against these problems, the West, I don't mean just the UK, the West in general, will be in for very dark times ahead. Because it has happened in the past, so we shouldn't be so arrogant to think it can't happen to us. It can happen to us unless we wake up and we fight back.
And just finally, then, before we say goodnight to everybody, I loved this post to end on what I find amusing anyway. The Mirror posted this, and I've zoomed in as far as I could go. That's probably a little bit too much. Hopefully Alex's elderly eyes can get a sort of look at that.
But, how did I know that was coming?
It's the Daily Mirror say the UK is set to be blasted by a 48-hour, 26 degrees Celsius heat wave, with 5 cities in England the hottest. Now, all of the comments are hilarious things like, a couple of days of pleasant 26-degree weather in summer. How will you survive? And then it's this meme of Batman saying it's summer and slapping Robin and saying it's so hot outside. And the Americans are saying that's 78 degrees Fahrenheit. That's a pleasant summer's day. And then another American, 79 degrees. That's a cool summer in Louisiana. Y'all are weak. And then Australians are getting involved. And this guy says it's the same vibes as this meme that's been going around, in which, you know, despite the fact it was warmer in the past, they now paint it as red, blackened earth. That is burnt to a crisp by the emerging climate. And you just sort of think it is actually, I think they're doing us a favour here. We mentioned Just Stop Oil at the start. They're doing us a favour here by going too far, right? They're calling into question how serious they are, because people are looking outside of their windows right now when they're not seeing a delicious summer's day. They haven't seen that. They've had the heating on potentially in as recent as this month, and have been wondering when summer might arrive. So for them to all say 26 degrees Celsius, describe it as some kind of apocalyptic climate event, it's just an absurdity. You've got to laugh at it. So we're laughing at them. We're laughing at Just Stop Oil. We're laughing at these people. They just sound utterly nuts. So they're doing us all a massive favour here, aren't they, Alex?
Yeah, I love it. It's great. And because look, you're absolutely spot on, Darren. The more nonsense that comes out of this absolutely ridiculous climate agenda, the more people reject it and go and actually start asking questions. Like, why are you doing that? Why are you making? I mean, and we know a lot of this is clickbait. But you know, when you see the actual weather reports and those maps are like something out of Lord of the Rings, like Mordor or something, it's like we're all going to be covered in.
I know, it does look like that, doesn't it?
Like, it really does. Yeah. It does. Yeah. You know, when you see that, it does become farcical. And again, as I said earlier on, the public aren't stupid. You can try and pretend things have changed when they haven't, and they'll go, "Well, I was alive 10 years ago, and it wasn't that bad. It was about the same." In fact, there was just a report the other week saying we had the hottest May on record or whatever it was, and I was like, it was bloody freezing. I had the heating on. I mean, so you know, reality, what they sell to you is you know, people just start laughing, as you said, Darren. It's great. It's great.
Yeah, Younes, do you think the tide is turning?
Yes, I think we've reached a point of peak woke, and the pendulum is swinging back.
God, I hope so.
Yeah, and you can see it. There's a natural pushback all over Europe towards right wing, and even in the UK reform and in America. And people are just not buying it. As Alex said, people are not stupid. You can't tell people the weather's warm when it's not. You know, they've lived through it. They know. And I think they just do this to, you know, spread fear, to impose more control. It's all, again, a globalist agenda to try to get us to net zero, whatever they want to do, however they want to control us, because you never know these people, what's going on in their mind. But people are wiser to it. People are wiser, and I'm really looking forward to this heat wave. And yeah, I'm going to have a good time. I'm actually going on a date tonight at 9. So.
Oh, very good, very good. Well, good luck with that. That's cheery
Enjoy.
news. Hopefully
Yeah,
they don't turn out to be utterly woke, but yes, that'll be good. They might burn in 26 degrees Celsius. Yeah. No, that's great news. Alex, I still haven't spoken about Star Wars. I'm desperate to get my teeth sunk into that at some point, but we'll have to do that another time. But I know there's a lot to unpack there and what Disney are doing to that franchise. It's pretty appalling indeed. I see in the latest episode they're now talking about
pronouns.
The main character says he and then corrects themselves and says they. So non-binary pronouns in Star Wars, all an attempt to educate your children. I would argue that that's not educating your children, it's making them thick, because these things don't bloody well exist. Benny says, cheers, Darren, Younes and Alex, vote reform. And of course, folks, I'm sure you all agree with me that we wish Younes very well and we hope he pulls tonight. Right, thank you very much for joining everyone at home. Remember to like, support, subscribe, and if you can give us any dosh, keep us on air, we appreciate that. Reason.uk is the link you need. Thank you as ever to the panel, Younes and Alex. Thank you very much, and we'll see you same time next week. And by the way, this will be exciting to some viewers, and I forget who it was. It might have been Always Pooh that kept asking, but Chloe Dobbs is back this week. She is back this week. So we will be seeing Chloe Dobbs potentially on this podcast, on this live stream rather, this time next week. So good news there. So Always Pooh can live in excitement and wet themselves with that sheer excitement at the prospect of Chloe Dobbs returning to this show. Thank you very much for watching. See you next week.